The team was fun.
And I suppose it's a unique occasion that we have local people here honouring one of their local musicians, one of their own. And I suppose it took Plaque Unveiled here to bring you all here together to mark the place where we believe Pádraig Ó Briain, the Limerick Piper, as he was so well known as, was born and grew up. And later on you'll get a good bit of history on Pádraig Ó Briain. But I just want to, first of all, to say a few words about Patrick and Mary here beside me, Patrick and Mary Malone. When I spoke to Mary a few years ago about this,
Tori and his wife, Una.
And also Patrick and Mary for inviting me to speak here today. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, you know, and we finally been able to link it in with the FLA, you know, to have, because as Frank said as well, because of Pádraig Ó Briain moving to Limerick, the painting got the name the Limerick Piper, okay? So it's, I know it says the Limerick Piper, but we've never forgotten him here in Knockaputteen in Labasheeda. Now, I'll just give a brief background of the townland here. That was a strange kind of a townland here because it actually translates of Knockaputteen, which is the hill of Putteen, so it doesn't really, but I had to do a bit of research on that as well. So even at the time from when Pádraig Ó Briain or Pádraig Ó Briain was born around 1773 right up till 1856, so he lived during the famine years as well. So you can imagine in this area of Labasheeda the hardship that the farmers would have gone through, the tenant farmers. So you would have had Putteen distilleries coming up in different areas throughout, not just Labasheeda, but in areas throughout the country to kind of get over this hardship of the famine. Now, another point Patrick made, he's very right that in this locality is it Mary Welsh as well that used to live in this house as well. I guess we better not forget Mary Welsh's actually husband, who was a very much part of, before I get on to Pádraig Ó Briain, I just mentioned this story. Mary Welsh's husband actually ran the tenders out from Shaughnessy's Field on the lower road of Red Gap. So the steamships coming out of Limerick going to Kilrush and off out into the Atlantic, they weren't able to pull in at Labasheeda. So a lad named Wolf and Ned Walsh was actually bringing the tenders out onto the ship. So you can imagine they would be lifting up livestock and they'd be lifting goods up to the steamships going abroad. So we better not, actually a tragedy happened. There's Ned Walsh actually drowned actually on the way back in on one of his return journeys from bringing goods and supplies out to the steamship. So I just wanted to make that known as well, that Mary Welsh was very good to the locals here, but her husband died tragically here doing what he loved and bringing goods out to the steamships out coming out of Limerick. Okay, so I was asked a few years ago on behalf of numerous organisations, the Dan Fury Committee, National Heritage Week, to provide tours in the locality. So one of the people that came up quite regularly was Pádraig Ó Briain. Now, he was born around the year 1773 in Knockaputteen. Now, the reason Knockaputteen as well, there's a neighbouring bog here if you just see behind the house as well. So he was educated in a local hedge school here, which said that it was actually a person called Peter McEnroe in the 1824 Education Inquiry ran a hedge school here in Knockaputteen, which held 74 pupils in a mud cabin here in Labasheeda. So it says in many articles on Pádraig Ó Briain, he was educated in a hollow of a hill, and just behind the house here we have what's called the Bog Road here locally, and there's a hollow in the hill. Now, he was also educated in the Greek and Latin and the classics, and I just like to welcome, I see Paul Markham there as well, who's done many books and a great local historian here. I know Paul, in many of his books, have wrote about a history of the classics in the Greek and Latin back at Kilcairn Cross here in the village. And it kind of links in at the Lack Isle Cross that there's every possibility that he could have been educated there, so in the two hedge schools. Now, at the age of about 25 or 26, he became blind, and after several years of hardships and bad harvests, his parents couldn't support him here in the land of Labasheeda. So he was sent to Limerick by his parents. Now, the reason I've also, I see Brother Sean McNamara, I'd like to welcome Brother Sean McNamara here as well. I know Brother Sean has written many times about Pádraig McMahon, a local storyteller, and Shanachie in Kimberley McMahon. And also, Pádraig McMahon was blind as well. So I've done research in the area, so I think that I know Pádraig McMahon, the reason he became blind was because his work meant that he was working out on the bog and he was moving bog. Knockaphutten. Now, he moved at the age of 26 to Limerick, and he hoped to get support from the landlords in Limerick, but he got no support. Now, the reason I can put down for that, and I'll go to 1840, you have an English couple called the Halls, who travelled throughout Ireland as well, and they spoke about Rory Ogue, who's another blind piper in Killaloo. Now, at around 1830s, 1840s, faction fighting was taking place, and if you had faction fighting, you would have it in pipers, and you also had what was coming in the 1830s and 1840s was the temperance movement as well. So the alcohol, the faction fighting, the hurling, all these Uileann Pipers. So Daniel O'Connell was coming along, Catholic emancipation was happening, and they didn't want this faction fighting, the drinks to be sold as well at that time, or drinks to be had. So the reason the patrons or the landlords were not giving him the support was because they would need to stop that because of Catholic emancipation with Daniel O'Connell coming in. I just found I was in Limerick last week at Hartstonge Street, which is the corner of where Pádraig Ó Briain actually played, and the Daniel O'Connell monument in Limerick is right looking over him as well, so it's quite unique as well. But again, he lived in Punt Lane in Nicholas Street in Limerick, and he played in the corner of Hartstonge Street and the Crescent, which is now, let's be up Upper O'Connell Street. Now, in 1844, Joseph Patrick Heverty, famous Galway painter, now he was living in Dublin. His patrons were based in Limerick, that's why he was in Limerick, and he came across Pádraig Ó Briain. But he was also a very famous Galway person, so Galway painter. He was born in 1794 and died in 1864. So he met him there, and the reason he painted him was because even though Pádraig Ó Briain or Pádraig Ó Briain had came from extreme poverty, he was there in the corner of Hartstonge Street, and he was still showing, as the painting suggests, he was still showing the nobility of the countenance of youth. So he was still showing the features of a young man, and he was very dignified in his manner. Like, he was in extreme poverty, which you can see here. And we can also see a young girl in the actual painting as well. And young girls would have followed the musicians around, and they would have probably got a halfpenny for keeping the fires going and keeping the fires lit. And so I've heard a really good article saying that it was like the poor guarding the poor. Like, so she was his guardian, and some people believe, it's reputedly said that that is his daughter. Now, I'm still investigating this as well, and evidence as well. He's said to have two daughters. Two of them were both in employment when he became very sick in 1855 and 1856, and one of them had to pledge most of her clothes to pay for her father in his illness. But I'm still investigating the two daughters as well, and see if I can actually, there should be come up in Limerick, and I'm still investigating that. Now, I'll just go through the paintings. The first painting, Sir Robert Gore-Booth of Lissadell House, he was an MP, and he's actually the grandfather of Countess Markovich, so I know about the 1916 Rising. Now, he was also vice president of the Royal Irish Art Union at the time, so he commissioned Haverty to paint this painting in 1844. So that first painting was in Lissadell House, and because of its unique painting, you can see here that it's not what Limerick would have been like at the time. It has a woodland scene in the background, and you can see that Pádraig Ó Briain is sitting on a rocky outcrop, and there's a fire here, and there's a good place. So its first painting was actually painted in a romantic style. And I know numerous copies. There's one hanging in the University of Limerick, and again, that's the Irish girl would not be your quintessential Irish girl. They've changed that, and they've painted in the Victorian style, and she has a posy of flowers, and she also had, there's a dog in the painting as well. So there are subtle changes that were done, but it was painted in the romanticised view of Ireland, and you can imagine the political tension that would have been going on. You had Catholic emancipation there as well. You had Sir Robert Gore-Booth as an MP, so it had to be painted in a way that wouldn't go against the political scene at the time. Now, he actually, in 1855, he actually fell on an icy day in 1855, and from August 1856 to the 1st of December 1856, he was bedridden. He was in his bed for 4 months until he died in Pump Lane off Nicola Street. And Pump Lane is now Bishop's Road in Limerick, so if you're in, it's just right beside the Milk Market, and it's beside St Mary's Cathedral. So it's still very in the English town area, the old medieval quarters of Limerick. And he died there. If I could just finish on one slight piece of a poem, that even though he was very ill at the time, he still was very dignified. And he actually is buried in Kilquan Cemetery, which is in Partine, near just outside Limerick. And I know the people of Partine are very much want to commemorate the fact that he's buried in Partine as well. So he died on the 1st of December 1856, and actually another person that died within a week of that was Theobald Matthew of the Temperance Society of Ireland. So he died on the 8th of December, so that's another figure that died, and very importantly. Now, the second painting that was donated to the National Gallery of Ireland in Dublin was donated by William Smith O'Brien of 1848 fame, because he commissioned the one in the National Library of Ireland. He donated in 1864, and William Smith O'Brien actually died that same year in 1864, and he had after 1848 he was sent to Australia, and he had to came back again. And also that same year, 1864, was the year Joseph Patrick Haverty died as well. So if I just want to finish on this, even though he died and he was very ill in the last 4 months of his life, he still had very much poetic ability. So he wrote a small little poem, and it said, "Great Haverty, who painted me, will hear with sad emotion his pipers fall just under the wall where he so long held his station." So there's Pádraig Ó Briain and Pádraig Ó Briain's old little poem that he wrote when he knew he was close to death, but he still was very dignified, and we remember him fondly here in Knockaphutten Labasheeda. Thanks very much.
Little did I think, leaving Knockaphutten Parish last Saturday morning, that I would come to Labasheeda and witness this wonderful occasion today. As Frank said, we in Knockaphutten honour Pádraig Ó Briain, the blind harper. He was also a composer. So he was born in the 1600s, and there is a likeness between the two, being blind, unfortunately, at an early age. So I have I want to pay tribute to Kevin. Is it Kevin who done the research, or Stephen? Is it Stephen who has done the research on Pádraig Ó Briain, and I wish him well in his further research on the two daughters. For Míle Maith.
Well, a cahier leg, Octaron and Coltish, a Vraher, Ervinig, Corlor, Agus a Carja, Golair. Nigadums a rag go gurden sé áhas crí ormsa behan Shahinov. Shall O'Coid Starul, Agus Tamid, Gomor Fui Comin Egnadina, a Hort Queen Obershaw, Agus Tam Lawn Kinsha, Golanishi de Varai, Nation Ober, a Machanshaw Freshen. I was just thinking, with every event that's organised, you need a driver. And I must say that Frank Uileann has been doing so much in this area for so long, and he's doing it so quietly, but so efficiently. So as the late Liam O'Morocco used to say, you might give him a big boulabas for all the work he has been doing. The attention to detail here today is evident. But there's one thing happened here today that I never saw before, and I doubt if I'll ever see again. You hired in a dog to catch the midgets and the flies. And that was really great thinking. Mary and Pádraig, you did a great job. And Frank was praising Mary and Pádraig for all the work they've done. And I can add to that their apple tart and their sweet cake, which we had just before we came down, is second to none. Your hospitality is very much appreciated. Listening to Stephen's fascinating history of the man and his times, Pádraig Ó Briain, or Pádraig Ó Briain as he may have been known back then, reminds us of one thing, and that is what's important in life. You could have built the Empire State Building, you could have owned the Empire State Building, and you would pass on and never be remembered. And look at this small house here. And here since 1773, we are prepared to remember Pádraig Ó Briain because of his own work in playing music, his scholarship, his commitment, and his dedication. And it's evident that his memory will continue for decades and centuries to come. And you can just try to visualize what Pádraig as a young man was like. I presume the house would have been thatched at that time. And just imagine him coming in and out of this house, having learned music away from the populations, if you like, but his determination to play that music, and only for there were people, and indeed reminding us of Labasheeda as well. That's what's important, the community. And you've turned out here today as a community. And you're going to, in many ways, keep the story of Pádraig alive and reinvigorate our pride as a result of that. We're here today, and I would regard this event as magical. And I don't wish to overstate anything, but it's magical to think that we're out here in a rural part of Ireland. No big fanfare, nothing of that kind, no banners or anything, just as a people appreciating the people who went before us, but also appreciating that we have had their legacies passed on to us as well. When Fergal played on the pipes a while ago, he was telling us the essence of why we're here today. And the reason for it is that the music that could have disappeared has remained alive, practiced by thousands and thousands of people. And also go to the Flagshole, there will be 10,000 performers at the Flagshole. Now, I don't know if Pádraig Ó Briain would have been thinking at that time as to what the next century might bring, or the next century. I don't know. But what I do know is this. I don't think any people would have foreseen that our music today would be played in Moscow, in Tokyo, in South America, throughout the whole globe. Why? Because there were people who kept it alive for a time when we might appreciate more what we have. There were difficult times in Ireland, and we've had so many difficult times. We had the famine, which decimated us. We had a situation of unemployment. Even when Comhaltas was founded in 1951, people were leaving this island in their droves because there wasn't employment here for them. But at the same time, there was a good side to that story, because they brought the music with them. And that music was played, practiced, revered, and passed on in the countries of their adoption. That's what's important. And there will be numerous people from those countries here for the Flagshole. So that's why we're here today, not just to commemorate, but I think more importantly to celebrate Pádraig Ó Briain and people like him who kept the music alive. I'm sure Fergal here must be thinking as well as a young piper, how the pipers who went before. Last year we celebrated Garrett Barry, again through the work of Frank here. So I compliment everybody here today, first of all for your interest. Secondly, the fact that the building still exists. Wouldn't it have been very sad today if we were gathered on this spot and there was only a few stones left and we were trying to, in some way, activate the imagination as to what it might have looked like? The building is intact, and today there will be a plaque there. And I would hope that the local schools would bring their pupils here and tell them about Pádraig Ó Briain. I know trips to the zoo in Dublin are important, and trips of that kind, but there is nothing as important as your local history and your local heroes. And